Nithyanandam. We'll start with the Sadguru Vandanam. Nithyanandam Paramasukaram Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasya Dilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Triganahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Nithyanandam, welcome back. We're entering into the next segment of the Bhagavad Gita Decoded. So we're moving into the page 4, we can see here. Mahabharat is the story of your life. Mahabharat is the story of your life. Mahabharat, literally meaning the great Bharat, is a grand narration about the nation and civilization which is known now as India. It was then a nation ruled by King Bharat and his O scion of Bharat race, whatever dharma, righteousness, artha, economic growth, kama, pleasure, and moksha, liberation exist in this text is found elsewhere. But what is not found in this text does not exist elsewhere. Wow. Look into your life. Your whole life is nothing but the Mahabharat war. The Mahabharat should be read again and again to understand the intricacies of life, the complications of life, and the ability to handle life. The true story of this perfectly recorded epic is about two warring clans, Kauravas and Pandavas, closely related to one another. Dhritarashtra, the blind king of Hastinapur and father of the 100 Kaurava brothers, was the brother of Pandu, whose children were the 5 Pandava princes. It is a tale of strife between cousins and ultimately between dharmic and adharmic, righteous and unrighteous civilizations. Since Dhritarashtra was blind, Pandu was made the king of Hastinapur. Pandu was cursed by a sage that he would die if he ever entered into physical relationship with his wives. He therefore had no children. Vyasa says that all of the 5 Pandava children were born to their mothers Kunti and Madri through the blessing of divine beings. Pandu handed over the kingdom and his children to his blind brother, Dhritarashtra, and retired to spiritual penance. Had received the boon when she was still a young, unmarried adolescent, that she could summon any divine power at will to father a child. Before she married, she tested her boon. The sun god's of social reprisals, she cast the newborn away in a river. Yudhishthira, Bhima, and Arjun were born to Kunti after her marriage by invocation of her powers, and the twins, Nakula and Sahadeva, were born to Madri, the second wife of Pandu. Yudhishthira was born to Kunti as a result of her being blessed by Yama, the god of death, dharma, and justice. Bhima by Vayu, the god of wind, and Arjun by Indra, god of all the divine beings. Nakula and Sahadeva, the youngest Pandava twins, were born to Madri through the divine Ashwini twins. Dhritarashtra had 100 sons through his wife Gandhari. The eldest of these Kaurava princes was Duryodhana. Duryodhana felt no love for his 5 Pandava cousins. He made many unsuccessful attempts, along with his brother Dushasana, to kill the Pandava brothers. Kunti's eldest son Karna, whom she had cast away, joined hands with Duryodhana. Dhritarashtra gave Yudhishthira 1/2 of the Kuru kingdom on his coming of age, since the Pandava prince was the rightful heir to the throne that his father Pandu had vacated. Yudhishthira ruled from his capital Indraprastha along with his brothers Bhima, Arjun, and Nakula, and Sahadev. Arjun won the hand of Princess Draupadi, daughter of the king Panchala, in his Swayamvara, a marital contest in which princes fought for the hand of a fair damsel. In fulfillment of their mother Kunti's desire that the brothers share everything equally, Draupadi became the wife of all 5 Pandava brothers. Duryodhana persuaded Yudhishthira to join a gambling session where his cunning uncle Sakuni defeated the Pandava king. Yudhishthira lost all that he owned, his kingdom, his brothers, his wife, and himself, to Duryodhana. Dushasana shamed Draupadi in public by trying to disrobe her. The Pandava brothers and Draupadi were forced to go into exile for 14 years, with the condition that in the last year they should live incognito, or Ajatavasa. At the end of the 14 years, the Pandava brothers tried to reclaim their kingdom. In this effort, they were helped by Sri Krishna, the king of the Yadava clan, who is the 8th divine incarnation of Lord Vishnu. However, Duryodhana refused to yield even a needle point of land, and as a result, the Great War, the War of Mahabharat, ensued. In this war, various rulers of the entire nation, that is modern India, aligned with one or the other of these 2 clans, the Kauravas or the Pandavas. Krishna offered to join with either of the 2 clans. He says, "One of you may have me unarmed. I will not take any part in the battle. The other may have my entire Yadava army." When the offer was first made to Duryodhana, he predictably chose the large and well-armed Yadava army, Narayani Sena, in preference to the unarmed Krishna. Arjun joyfully and gratefully chose his dearest friend, his life mentor, and his guru, Krishna, Narayana, to become his unarmed charioteer. Link of the there's a super audio series recording of Bhagavad Gita. If you want to get that, just send me a message. I'll also include it in the links, maybe in future sessions. Om, I meditate upon you, Bhagavad Gita, the affectionate Divine Mother, showering the nectar of Advaita, non-duality and destroying rebirth, incorporated into the midst of Mahabharat of 18 chapters by sage Vyasa, the author of the Puranas, and imparted to Arjun himself, Bhagavan Narayan himself. Bhagavad Gita appears in the heart of Mahabharat in Bhishma Parva, the 6th chapter of its 18 chapters. Vedavyasa, the narrator, in glorifying the Gita sings, "The one who drinks the water of Ganga, the sacred river for Hindus, attains liberation. What to speak of the one who drinks the nectar of Gita? Gita is the essential nectar of the Mahabharat. Bharatam Mrita, Sarvashvam, as it is directly spoken by Narayan, Bhagavan Krishna himself. The armies assemble often on opposite sides. Kaurava army and his friends, relatives, and teachers, Arjuna was overcome by remorse and guilt and wanted to walk away from the battle out of total powerlessness and becoming an invincible warrior among warriors. Sri Krishna's dialogue with Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, out of his utmost concern and love for him and humanity, is the content of Bhagavad Gita. Of its 745 verses, Bhagavan Sri Krishna sings the Gita in 620 verses, responding to Arjun's 57 enquiries. Sri Krishna persuades Arjun to give up his powerlessness, unfitting an Arya, the spiritually evolved one who understands human life, and urges him to raise himself again as Parantapa, the conqueror of enemy, and take up arms and vanquish his enemies. They are already dead, says Sri Krishna. All of those who are facing you have already been killed by me. Go ahead and do what you have to do. That is your responsibility. Do not worry about the outcome. Leave that to me. Gita is the ultimate practical teaching on the inner science of spirituality that expresses as outer victory and success in life, now and after. It is not, as some scholars incorrectly claim, a promotion of violence. It is about the impermanence of the mind and body and the need to go beyond the mind, ego, and logic. Being blind with self-doubt, King Dhritarashtra does not participate in the war. His minister, Sanjaya, uses his power of clairvoyance bestowed by Vedavyasa to see and relate to King Dhritarashtra the goings-on the battlefield. It is in Sanjaya's voice that we hear Gita, the dialogue between Sri Krishna and Arjuna. All the Kaurava princes, as well as their commanders, such as Bhishma, Drona, and Karna, were killed in battle. The 5 Pandava brothers survived as winners and became the rulers of the combined kingdom. This dialogue sung between Sri Krishna and Arjuna is a dialogue between man and God, or Nara and Narayana, as they are called in Sanskrit. Arjuna's questions and doubts are those of each one of us. Nara Arjuna is the leader, the embodiment of responsibility representing the whole humanity that is burdened with the sufferings born from self-doubt, self-hatred, and self-denial of its innate moksha. Only Narayana, as Sri Krishna, can support a divine smile on his face and sing the nectars of Advaita, space of infinity, non-duality, in Sankhya Yoga, knowledge of completion in the midst of the waging world war. Only Bhagavan, one possessed with infinite powers, infinite knowledge, infinite renunciation, and infinite riches, fame, and beauty, can declare the imperishable and eternal nature of the self, and also give the direct experience of the self to Arjuna in Vishvarupa Darshan Yoga, and culminate it with Moksha Sannyasa Yoga, the yoga of liberation. The answers of the divine Sri Krishna transcend time and space. Sri Krishna's message is everlasting and joyfully performed, and is as valid today as it was on that fateful battlefield over 5,000 years ago. The science of Gita is the eternal technique of living in completion. The song of Gita is the eternal life-enriching nectar, having no expiry date, time, or age. It is not a commentary or a modern interpretation on the Bhagavad Gita. It is the speaking, the revival of the supreme secret of the Gita from consciousness of the rare living incarnation, Paramahamsa Nithyananda, who embodies the very science and experience of the Gita. A pure, absolute revelation of the happening of Gita presented in its original spirit and body language that only an enlightened being can radiate through the inexpressible energy veiled within his expressed words. To read this book is to obtain an insight that is rare. It is not mere reading. It is an experience. It is meditation. He takes the reader through an inner world tour while talking on each verse. It is believed that each verse of Gita has 7 levels of meaning. What is commonly rendered is the first level meaning. Here, an enlightened master in incarnation takes us beyond the common into the uncommon with equal ease and simplicity. The power of the living master's words, the confidence and energy of enlightenment, the space of Advaita that he radiates can directly become the experience in us when we authentically study this book. The absolute truths of life are to be listened and internalized from the direct source, the living presence of those truths, who can also transmit the experience unto us. His Holiness Paramahamsa Nithyananda explains the inner metaphorical meaning and the deep spiritual insights of the Mahabharat and the Bhagavad Gita. Understand this whole history is such a beautiful happening. Mahabharat is actually your life. Every character in the Mahabharat teaches so much. We don't need any other book to learn the human psychology or the science of living and leaving. Whether we seek righteous living, dharma, or we want to learn business or administration, economy or abundance, artha, or we want to create the best rich. For all these purposes, we don't need any other than the Mahabharat. Study each character. We will not find any more characters in our life than the characters described in the Mahabharat, Any character we see in our life is mapped to Mahabharat's one character. They are either half or full representation of some character. To know how to handle them and even handle yourself, just see how Sri Krishna handles them and handle them the same way. The Mahabharat is an unbiased historian who recorded the whole history as it happened without trying to apply any makeup. People ask whether the Mahabharat war happened at all. Let me tell you this, if the Mahabharat was a story and not history, Vyasa should receive multiple Pulitzer Prizes for his highly creative work. The Mahabharat is the longest literary work in the world, with 100,000 Sanskrit verses, the longest poem ever written, with such delicate harmony of unmatched poetic perfection. It is larger than the Greek epics. Vyasa had no computer, no tape recorder with speech-to-text capabilities. He dictated and Lord Ganesha wrote it down. The Mahabharat is like an ocean. It has at least 10,000 stories woven into it. All of these are seamlessly woven into the main text, even though each is an independent event. Just imagine the effort required to create hundreds of thousands of characters and maintain the integrity of these characters throughout the entire epic without the help of editors. Do you think anyone could do it today? Because it is impossible to create such a work of fiction, one needs to accept this is a compilation of true incidents that reflect the lifestyle in what is referred to as Treta Yuga, third quarter of time in our scriptures. This is how people behaved then and how people behave now. What happened then repeats itself now, again and again. The great war of Mahabharat is the fight between the positive and negative thought patterns of the mind, called the samskaras, or the root thought patterns, meaning the deep identity or the earliest memory you carry and create about you and others. Please understand, don't think you can carry all the identity about you. You also carry an identity of the world inside you, and look at the world only through that. That is what I call a root thought pattern. The identity through which you see you and the world. The positive thought patterns are the Pandava princes, and the negative thought patterns are the Kaurava princes. Kurukshetra, or the battlefield, is the body. Arjuna is the individual consciousness, and Sri Krishna is the enlightened master, the supreme consciousness driving and guiding the individual consciousness. The various commanders who led the Kaurava army represent the man who embodies dharma, represents the pattern of parental. Drona, the teacher of both the Kauravas and the Pandavas, represents the conditioning from teachers who provide knowledge, including spiritual guidance. Shakuni, the maternal uncle of Duryodhana, embodies a pattern of self-hatred, which is cunningness personified. Karna represents the restrictive influence of good deeds, such as charity and compassion, then out of incompletion from the pattern of feeling deprived. Finally, Duryodhana represents the ego or the self-denial pattern, which is root of the root patterns and is the last to fall. Parental and societal conditioning has to be overcome by rebelling against conventions. This conditioning does not die as long as the body lives, but its influence drops. Drona represents all the best knowledge one imbibes and the teachers one encounters, who guide us but are unable to take us through to the ultimate flowering of enlightenment. It is difficult to give them up since one feels grateful to them. This is where the enlightened master, the incarnation, steps in and guides us. Karna is the repository of all good deeds, and it is his good deeds that stand in the way of his own enlightenment. Sri Krishna has to take experience of enlightenment as the ultimate act of compassion that one can offer to the world. Finally, one reaches Duryodhana, one's ego or root pattern, the most difficult to conquer as it leads one to self-destruction. One needs the full help of the master here. It is subtle work, and even the master's help may not be obvious, since at this point, sometimes the ego makes us deny and disconnect from the master as well. The Great War was between 118 million, 18 crore people, 180 million, 18 crore people, 110 million on the Kaurava side, representing our negative root patterns and conflicting patterns, samskaras, and 70 million on the Pandava side, representing our positive patterns. The war lasted 18 days and nights. The number 18 has a great mystical significance. It essentially signifies our 10 senses that are made up of 5 jnanendriya, the senses of perception like taste, sight, smell, hearing, and touch, and 5 karmendriya, the senses initiating action like speech, bodily movements, etc., added to our 8 kinds of thoughts like lust, greed, etc. All 18 need to be dropped for self-realization, completion, or liberation, moksha. Mahabharat is not just an epic history. It is not merely the fight between good samskaras, root patterns that reside in our bio-mind system, which must happen for the ultimate liberation. Living Advaita, the process of powerfully living, radiating enlightenment, causing enlightenment for humanity. Wow. That's all for today. I'd like to thank everyone for joining, and please post your questions, and we'll complete today's session chanting the Purna Mantra. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sarvam Bhagavat Shri Nithyananda Paramashiva Parukar Purnamastu. Om Nithyanandam. Thank you, everyone. Nithyanandam.